It's taken longer than I was hoping, but here we are. We're finally at the final Mega Man X game. I haven't played this one before either. Okay, that's not completely true. I played the beginning of X8 a few years ago, but I didn't get past a single stage because I wasn't really into it. But I basically said the same thing about X3, and I ended up really liking that game, so who knows. X8 is pretty much unanimously agreed to be a good game, unlike the last two, so I doubt I'm gonna have a bad time with it. It's a game I probably should have played a long time ago. Anyway, let's get into it. Apparently humans are finally starting to colonize the moon, so now they have this fancy space elevator. X runs into the guy in charge of the space elevator, who has an army of Sigmas by his side. His name's Lumine, by the way, and it turns out there's a whole new generation of Reploids that can use Axel's copy ability. They're also immune to viruses and can't go Maverick. Then Vile kidnaps Lumine, so he can control the space elevator. To fight 8 more Mavericks. It's pretty much it as far as plot goes. Bringing back Vile would be cool, but he doesn't really do anything. He shows up in some stages as a mini-boss, but that's it. You can remove him from the game completely and nothing changes. I forgot about him every time he left the screen. There's still cutscenes in between each stage, and they're handled a lot better. Here, they're used more to build up relationships between all the characters and flesh out their personalities more. It probably helps that the writing in this game is much better than X6 and X7. Axel definitely could have came off as an annoying rookie in the last game, but he feels more like an energetic hotshot this time. His personality is a really good contrast to X and Zero's more stoic tones. The game also has 2 new Navigators, Layer and Palette. Layer is the shy one with an obvious crush on Zero. Not that I blame her, I mean look at him. While Zero never quite showed any signs of being interested in her, he definitely warms up to Layer and even specifically wants her to be his navigator by the end. Probably leading to Zero finally being able to move on from Iris. You know, probably. Palette doesn't really have as much going on with her. She's the more upbeat one that's in charge of the R&D lab so he can buy upgrades. More on that later. You know, while we're talking about the Navigators, I really like Alia's redesign. I feel it fits her personality a lot better. As a kid, I always thought that she was a boy. Now, that may sound stupid, but I didn't read the dialogue in X5 when I was like 6. This image on the stage results was the only time I ever saw her. The short hair and face looked more like a boy to me. She wears pink, yeah, but Timmy on the Fairly Odd Parents also wore pink. Kirby's a boy, and he's pink. Like, pink may be the stereotypical girl color, but it never really screamed girl to me as a kid. Even now, my brain goes Kratos mode and screams boy at this image. I definitely wouldn't make this mistake in X8. We can actually pick which navigator we want to use in stages, which is a really cool idea. Alia gives you stage hints, Layer tells you about boss strategies, and Palette tells you about hidden areas and secrets. Palette is obviously the most useful of the 3. Even if you're an experienced player, telling you where hidden items are is really helpful. The other 2, not as much. Alia's hints tend to be pretty obvious to anyone who's played a Mega Man game before, but I can at least understand why a new player might find her advice helpful. Her hints this time aren't quite as obvious as go right. Layer is probably the only one that's outright useless. As far as I can tell, she doesn't tell you about boss weaknesses, and the bosses in this game aren't very complicated, so she just tells you about things that you're gonna figure out just by fighting the boss anyway. It also means that she may as well not be there until right near the end of the stage. Being able to pick a different operator and get different kinds of hints is a really cool idea. It's just that in practice, Palette is the only one that actually tells me consistently useful information. Alia is mainly there for beginners, and Layer has the same problem that Alia used to have, where her hints are too obvious. But you can turn it off, so it's hard to complain about it too much. Real gamers can finally play the game completely uninterrupted. With the gameplay, you notice how much better everything controls, like, immediately. The game's back to being 2D, so there's no more lock-on, which means everything controls how you'd expect it to. X plays how he always has, but Axel can fire in 8 directions. While he doesn't have a charge shot, he fires shots so rapidly that it's practically a giant bullet laser. He's also got an air hover that lets you course correct your jumps, and you can activate it in the air just like you'd expect. X7 is weird. Instead of getting the same limited use special weapons after being a boss like X does, Axel gets different weapons that replace his regular shot. It's a really cool way to set him apart from X aside from being able to shoot in multiple directions. Although I have to admit that I mainly just use the ray gun and ice gatling for the most part. They more or less just replace his regular shot. It's still good for breaking enemy defenses, but in general, these 2 weapons just feel like a better version of his regular gun. His grenade launcher and homing dart thing are also pretty fun to use. I didn't end up using X's weapons much this time because his charge shot is so laughably good in this game that they weren't really worth using, but I'll get more into that later. The team-up mechanic from X7 makes a return too, and it's way better here. The character in reserve slowly regains health like they usually would in a fighting game, so I ended up using both characters I picked a lot more often. You don't die when one character runs out of health either, you just swap to the one that's still alive. Yeah, that was a thing in X7. X7 is weird. But you still want to keep both characters alive because now they have a team-up attack that's pretty much a giga attack. It has low range, but it does do a good amount of damage. The intro stage in this game is definitely a lot more interesting than in most of the previous games. After the first game, the intro stage always felt like it was just setting up the story. It's used to show off the inciting incident, like how X4 showed Sky Lagoon falling into the surface, or how X7 showed Axel meeting up with the rest of the gang. But in X8, it's used as an opportunity to force you to play as the different characters and get used to all their strengths and weaknesses. And unlike X7, I felt like I was playing as all three characters about equally. I think I might have played as Zero the least, though. I don't know what it is about him in this game. In the PS1 games, he just felt so perfect. But he's missing a few standard moves here that made playing as him so awesome. The air slash was really spammable and really reliable before, but I honestly forgot that he could even do that in this game. It's just a lot of small stuff like that that makes Zero feel less satisfying to play as. He doesn't even get a spinning air slash. Well, okay, he does, but it stops you mid-air and you have to manually activate it. It's not the same. You can extend Zero's combo with upgrades in the shop, but I don't know, man. Whenever I played X4, I never thought that his regular combo needed more attacks. It already felt perfect, especially with dash canceling, but I didn't know that was a thing until recently, as in after I already made the X4 video. Zero still plays pretty well in X8, but he definitely felt like the weakest of the three characters, especially with the weapons that Axel gets. Maybe this was their subtle way of telling you to go play Mega Man Zero, which you absolutely should, but that doesn't change how wrong Zero feels in this game. Now, the stages in this game are, let's leave it at interesting for now. For some reason, there are two bike stages. Avalanche Yeti stage is more of a shoot 'em up, and each character even has different projectiles. It's fine, but the part with the mini-boss is really annoying if you're not playing as X, because he's the only one with enough range to damage him from a distance. Otherwise, you have to wait for him to get close to you, and you have to dash up to him. It's just annoying. The stage only took me a few tries, though. Gigavolt Man of War stage is definitely the worst stage in the game. It's like this weird Star Fox section, and it's not totally obvious what you're even supposed to do. I think you're supposed to use boosts to catch up to Gigavolt so you can damage him, but I couldn't figure out how to do it consistently. I'm not sure what I even did differently on my winning attempt. You have to be quick about it too, since there's a time limit before a bomb goes off and kills you. Because of course there is. It's just not a fun stage. Luckily, there's no armor part or sub-tank here, so you never have to come back to it. Also, they're not even trying with these Maverick names anymore. What happened here? Why Man of War? Why Gravity Antonian? Why not just say Gravity Ant? Why Bamboo Pandemonium? Why not just say Bamboo Panda? Whatever. Although, most of them are fine this time, I guess. Burn Rooster being a Blaziken ripoff is kinda cool. Earthrock Trilobite is definitely one of the weirder names. He also has one of the best stages. You're being chased down by a giant robot for most of it, and it's hard too. Now, the stage isn't ball busting or anything. You can definitely get used to it after a few tries. The main parts I really struggled with were the two times where we actually had to fight the giant robot. As soon as you figure out what you're supposed to do, the stage is pretty easy. But let me just say that finally being able to blast through the whole stage without even trying was oddly satisfying. It's just a really cool, fun stage. Bamboo Panda is basically the ride armor level. Instead of getting ride armor throughout the stage, you're supposed to protect the same armor until the end to make the boss easier. But I couldn't do this because I'm bad at video games. It's a cool idea that's executed pretty well. I just hate this one part with the conveyor belts. One conveyor belt is going in the opposite direction of the other ones, but he can't see it very well, so he ended up falling off it and dying. It took me a few tries to even understand what was happening. Dark Mantis has a cool stage, but it's pretty standard. It's gonna have a pseudo-stealth section where you avoid searchlights and lasers. I just don't like how hard it is to see when the lights are off. You can turn them back on Maxwell's A-Trans, but it's pretty much only there to get a sub-tank. It's kinda stupid how you're supposed to do it. I'll get into that later. Optic Sunflower is definitely the weirdest stage. Instead of playing a level, you play a series of challenges that you're ranked on. Get a fast enough time on them, and you get a rare medal. There are a few short sections in between each challenge, but if you're at least decent in this stage, it's over in like 2 seconds. It's a cool idea, I just don't like how quick everything goes by. I feel like this could have been some optional VR training mission instead of his own stage. I saved Burn Rooster and Gravity Antonian for last because they both have the same problem. While X5 through 7 had this kind of weird pseudo-infinite life system where a game over just brought you back to the last checkpoint, X8 is back to limited lives. You get a game over, you have to restart the stage. Pretty standard stuff. But when I say limited lives, I mean really limited lives. In the previous games, you could die a maximum of 9 times before you had to restart the stage. Here, it's up to 6 times, and there's no way to get more lives in stages. You start out with 2 retry chips, and if you want more, you have to buy them. You even have to upgrade your capacity first. Luckily, the game uses up the retry chips that come back after the end of the stage first, so you don't waste too many of them. But I shouldn't have to tell you why needing to buy extra lives is inherently stupid. Keep this problem in mind as I complain about these last 2 stages. Burn Rooster stage is mostly an auto-scroller, which is annoying, but nothing too bad. But then you have this part in the boiler room. There's spikes everywhere, and the camera's so zoomed in that you can't see them coming. You're also not always in the center of the screen. The camera only starts panning vertically when you're far enough to the edge of the screen. I'm pretty sure it's there to reduce camera jitter and make it less nauseating to play. This isn't a bad thing, by the way. A lot of games do something similar. You probably never even noticed it. This works fine for pretty much every other part of the game that's mostly horizontal, but in this section, it just makes it even harder to avoid the spikes. There's no way to react to it fast enough unless you already have this section memorized from having to play it so much. It all leads to a section where you're constantly dying from things you can barely see coming. It doesn't feel fair. Had there been pseudo-infinite lives like the last 3 games, I probably wouldn't even be complaining about this. It would be annoying, sure, but at least I wouldn't have to sit through the boring auto-scroller section to get back to this. Gravity Ant is a problem for opposite reasons. The stage is actually really fun and cool. You hit these switches to shift the gravity. It's not even like previous attempts of this in the X series where it was mostly faked and you didn't have to engage with the actual mechanic much. The entire stage is built around this idea, and it's a really fun stage that's executed well. But then there's a single section that's overly difficult and you end up having to replay the first part of the stage so much that it's not fun anymore. There's these spike blocks that move around. You have to keep dodging them until they disappear so you can move on. It's a lot harder than it looks, especially in the third phase where everything's moving around so much that it's hard to follow what's going on. And because there's spikes, all it takes is one wrong move before you have to start the whole thing over. It's an obstacle that requires a lot of trial and error to figure out where you're supposed to be and when. Something that wouldn't really be a problem if you could try it as many times as you want. But weirdly enough, on one attempt at this, Vile showed up instead of the blocks, and he was laughably easy by comparison. So I just moved further on in the stage without actually overcoming the obstacle that I was supposed to. And I probably would have beaten the stage if Pallet hadn't told me there was another teleporter in this room, which instantly told my monkey gamer brain this is definitely where the armor part was. And then I wasted all my lives trying to get to it. I had to look it up after to see if I was crazy, and yep, that teleporter led to the armor part. I was actually kind of mad that I was right, because at least if I was wrong, it would have been funny. This puzzle is just annoying. Now, I eventually figured out that you're supposed to stay on the right side of the screen to get past the spike block room. It's not that hard once you figure it out, but it took me like 50 minutes of pain to get there. And it probably would have taken way less time if I just had pseudo-infinite lives like the last 3 games. Now, I've been complaining about this a lot, but it really does ruin these 2 stages in particular. Burn Rooster stage is still kind of boring because it's an auto-scroller, but at least it wouldn't be frustrating when I can just try as many times as I needed to. It's not that they made the game too hard. Again, it's just frustrating. Being forced to play sections that I already finished and can clearly beat is not enjoyable. I'm really glad this is a common criticism of X8 because it feels like everyone's just collectively realized how pointless lives always were. Even just having a regular live system where you can at least get more of them in stages would be better than what this game has. They could even let you buy extra lives with metal. I know I keep repeating myself saying how annoying retry chips are, but it really did impact my enjoyment of X8. This isn't fun. Even with how lackluster the last 2 games were, I think I was actually having more fun playing X7, as insane as that sounds. It turns out I actually would take boring over frustrating. It's not just the lives thing. The stages aren't really that fun to me either. Most of these stages are cool ideas in a vacuum, but having all of them in the same game is too much. There's only like one regular stage with no gimmicks, and even that revolved around being a pseudo-stealth section. There's too much variety here. X8 really needed more time or I just played the game normally. This game almost feels like it has third game 3D platformer syndrome. Like how Spyro Year of the Dragon has all these extra playable characters that aren't nearly as fun to play as Spyro, and weird, dumb mini-games like skateboarding. Or how Crash 3 has so many vehicle sections and gimmick levels that you really just wanted to get back to playing the regular gameplay. Or how Sly 3 had to juggle so many playable characters and playstyles that you didn't really play as Sly that much. It never made any of these games bad or anything, but it was really annoying that you essentially got less of the gameplay you'd come to expect from a game like this. It just made it kind of alienating to a lot of people. X8 really could have used less interesting stages, as weird as that sounds. No bike levels, no challenges, no ride armor, just normal ass stages without any major gimmicks. For a game that feels so good to play in the moment, there isn't much opportunity to take advantage of that. Even if I was playing this game on a PS2 emulator with save states to give myself infinite lives, you still don't get to play the fun part of the game long enough. The first end stage where you're riding up the Jacob's elevator is probably the best part of the whole game. All you're really doing is fighting enemies, but it's such a fun way to test out your combat skills and abilities. If X8 had more levels like this, there wouldn't really be a problem. I could go over the item collection in this game, but to be honest, it barely even matters. You don't actually find new upgrades in stages. You find rare metals that you then have to spend your metal on in order to use. Like when you find a sub-tank ship, you don't just get the sub-tank. You also have to spend 1,000 metal in order to actually equip it. Luckily, that amount of metal is nothing, but it takes the fun out of finding new stuff. Why bother going out of my way for this when I have to grind up money in order to use it in the first place? Why not have it where you can buy all this stuff from the beginning, but if you find the rare metal for it, you can just buy it at a heavy discount or something? That could have been a good compromise between having you look for stuff while still making metal important. I'd still prefer if you just give it to me when I find it, but for the sake of trying something different, I think that would have gotten the job done. In all fairness, you can buy stuff like sub-tank refills, so that is a good change, but the whole metal system just feels unnecessary in practice. I'd rather just explore the stages and find upgrades, like it was in every other game. Part of the fun of Metroidvanias is exploring every nook and cranny to make yourself stronger over time. Here it feels more like an RPG where you spend money to upgrade your characters. That kind of upgrade system can be fun in its own way, but only when it doesn't require me to also find it in the first place. Like, X8 is trying to do both, which isn't as satisfying as one or the other. It ends up being irritating instead of fun, and it made me avoid the whole thing as much as possible. I mainly just spent my money on the life increases for all the characters and got the sub-tank that I was able to. And it was surprisingly convoluted to get. In Dark Mantis' stage, you have to use Axel's Ace Trance to copy a sword robot to get past a security guard, to power a generator, turn the lights back on, and then use Trilobite's weapon to, I guess, dig it out of the ground with a crystal? What? I would not have found this on my own. The other sub-tank is an Optic Sunflower stage by getting a high score in 5 to 7 of the challenges. Not 8, because that gives you a separate upgrade that generates metal while you walk around, which is also a bit pricey to actually buy once you quote-unquote earned it. I tried my best to get the one from Optic Sunflower, but I just couldn't do it. When you can just buy an energy bottle from the store instead, this felt like too much effort, especially since I didn't even need it. Now, I'm sure the comments are gonna tell me skill issue for not getting this. Luckily, the armor is a lot more straightforward to collect. There's no extra money stupidness to go through. Although we do need to switch to X in order to activate the capsule for some reason. Seriously, why is it still like this? X5 got it right the first time. The other character just gives the data to X later. Like, it doesn't require a complicated explanation. It's just annoying. And every stage except Gigavolt has an armor part, so you always need to bring X with you if you don't want to backtrack later. Anyway, the armor parts are actually really good in this game. Almost too good. We're back to having 2 armor sets, but you can mix and match the parts from each set. It was always really weird how in an X5 and X6, you can only use armor parts after you get all 4 parts. But this idea is even better. The red Icarus armor gives you a higher jump, more powerful charge shots, double defense, and being able to damage enemies by jumping near them. Can you tell which part's kinda useless? The blue Hermes parts gives you a triple charge shot, faster charging time, faster movement speed, and being impervious to weak attacks. You even get a bonus if you equip the whole set at once. The Icarus armor gives you a Giga Crash screen nuke, and the Hermes armor gives you X Drive, which temporarily gives you faster movement speed, faster charge shots, and more projectiles from the charge shots. Whether or not you even care about the bonus is just preference. Neither one is that good. The Icarus armor is definitely the better of the two, but honestly, you might be better off just swapping out being able to damage enemies by jumping near them for a faster charge shot, and then it's down to whether you want faster movement or higher jumps. The armor system in this game is really cool on paper, but the Icarus armor is so much better than the Hermes armor that it makes it inherently less interesting. The Icarus charge shot is so good that you mainly just want to be spamming that as much as possible. X's weapons are kind of useless for the most part because of how good this level 2 charge shot is. Not the giant laser you get from the 3rd level of charge. This level 2 charge is so spammable that all of X's other methods of attack become obsolete. I went with the full Icarus armor when I played because I thought the Giga Crush would be useful, but you already have one in the form of your team attack, so yeah. Just use the set that I was talking about before, and the end game is a total joke. I already mentioned the first end stage of X8. This elevator ride is awesome, but the rest of the end game is pretty standard. Nothing really happens until the end. The end stages this time are actually pretty easy compared to the main stages, and I didn't mind that. I appreciate that they saw how annoying this limited lives thing is and designed the final stages with that in mind. Assuming you got all the armor parts, bought all the retry ship and health upgrades, and at least one sub-tank, there's something here that's gonna take you more than a few tries. I only had to get back to the final boss once, and that was it. After you make it through this moon palace, going through it again is pretty easy. They even had the decency to make the boss rush his own stage, aside from an extra Sigma fight that's really easy. The final boss is a pretty fun fight, too. Sigma's got this really cool Demon King motif to him that just screams final boss. There's not much to say about the fight itself. It's pretty easy to figure out, but it's fun, which is really refreshing. But in the plot twist of the century, Sigma was not the real bad guy. Lumine was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. You know, the guy in charge of the Jacobs project and the giant space elevator. You remember him, right? From the beginning of the game, and then he's pretty much never mentioned again. Yeah, him. Anyway, the first phase against Lumine is definitely my favorite part of the whole fight. He fights using attacks from the stage bosses and has a shifting weakness to go with whatever he's using. It's a really fun idea for a fight, and it's a great alternative to an actual boss rush. Or at least it would be if this game didn't also have a boss rush. Like, seriously, why? You solved the age-old tradition of boss rushes. This is more interesting. Don't have both. Both is just stupid. The final phase against biblically accurate Lumine is probably my least favorite part of the fight, but that's only because you can accidentally fall off the stage and die instantly. With a camera angle, I assumed that the edges were just invisible walls. I didn't think that walking slightly off camera would flat out kill you. He also has an attack near the end where if you don't keep breaking his guard, he just kills you. Luckily, Axel's grenade launcher will break it instantly, but it's a really cheap shot that's definitely gonna give someone a game over. The ending is weird, because it ends up feeling more like setup for the next game than an actual conclusion. Lumine reveals that the new generation Reploids that are immune to viruses and can't go Maverick actually can go Maverick. They just have the ability to choose. It sets up an interesting idea going forward that newer Reploids have the ability to choose whether to be good or bad, that they have more free will than the previous models did. And after Lumine is defeated, Axel seems to be infected with some kind of Lumine virus. But because the game never got a follow-up, it's hard for me to care about where it's going. The ideas it presents are interesting, and it would make for a good sequel, but those ideas were obviously never explored. X8 is like, hey, look at all these new character dynamics and new conflicts, and was never able to do anything with them. They probably did intend to make an X9, but that doesn't change the fact that X9 doesn't exist. It's the Half-Life problem. It doesn't matter how good the setup is. If you never follow up on it and the player knows you'll never follow up on it, it's hard to actually care about where any of this is going. We're closing in on 6 years since I reviewed Mega Man 11. 6 years since the last time I looked at Mega Man, and nothing's changed. Unless hell freezes over and I have to rewrite this entire paragraph, there hasn't been a new Mega Man game in almost 7 years. We've only had collections since then. Really high quality collections, but still. Also play Mega Man Battle Network. This is not optional. We did get a gotcha mobile game, but I was burned out on mobile games long ago. There's just a worse version of a game I'd rather be playing 99% of the time. Even if it's one of the good ones, it's hard to justify spending my money on that. It's hard to justify spending my time on this. Finishing X8 just left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Too many possibilities that were never meant to be. It left me wanting more. A follow-up that actually did something with the seeds that X8 was planting. The setup is only as good as the payoff, so when there isn't a payoff, it all just feels like a waste. Not that any of this is the game's fault, it's just depressing. So yeah, that was the last Mega Man X game. I could probably still talk about the extreme games or command mission, but I've talked about Mega Man X for way too long. I'm just leaving it here. I might have skimmed over X8 a bit, but honestly, what else is there to really say about these games? It did add a new Game Plus mode, which is probably where Maverick Hunter X got the idea. You can also unlock the Navigators as playable characters. It's got some cool extras, but it's not really worth going over. As for the X series as a whole, I appreciate that they tried to do something different from the classic games by experimenting more, but in hindsight, they really should have experimented less. By throwing so much at the wall, they never had time to refine the weird ideas they had. Like X5's time limit or X6's nightmare system could have been really cool if they were better thought out. And it was really a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. X1 knocked things so out of the park right from the beginning that they had to experiment more so that it didn't just feel like a worse version of the first game, which led to pretty inconsistent game quality. They were still good games. Mostly. But when the most universally liked game past the first was the one that experimented the least, I feel maybe they could have gone more in X4's direction. You know, keeping things simple and improving what was already there. Because then I feel pretty burned out talking about these games. While I did enjoy playing most of them, X1 and X4 are the only ones I could go back and play right now with no issues. And this is even with playing the X games over the course of a year. I hardly binged them. Mega Man X just ends up being a very strange series as a result. The classic games were more of a steady stream. You already knew what you were getting yourself into. But Mega Man X is a total roller coaster. You had no idea if this game was going to be the best thing ever or if it was something that was practically made by aliens. While I'm glad that I finally played through all these games, it's made me question how much I even like Mega Man. Luckily, I like the Zero and ZX games significantly more than the X games, but don't expect those videos anytime soon. I'm done. I'm finally free. Let me talk about something else for the next several years. Regardless of how I've made it sound, it's been fun. Take care, everyone.